but the essential claim is right that obviously we don't have direct evidence that humans once had alpha males in which the most dominant male in a social group achieved his position through physical violence and used it to claim resources, including mating rights to many or all of the females.
Sorry to interrupt.
So
you said we don't have evidence for that?
We don't have direct evidence.
Okay.
We don't have a movie that takes us back
Right.
500,000 years. But what we do have is very clear evidence from the primate world and from animals in general that you have alpha males that achieve their position by dominating. And at some point, it sure seems as though in our ancestors, we would have had that same system. And in many ways, the question in my book, or a question in the book, is when was that true? Was it true with some species of Homo? Was it true with Australopithecines? Was it true only earlier? And I conclude that it was true up to about 300,000 years ago on the basis of the anatomical changes that we see in particularly the males.
So talk a little bit about those anatomical changes. What evidence does that give for there being a shift away from this alpha male society?
Well, the big story that is associated with Homo sapiens that is not associated, so far as we know, with any other species of Homo is craniofacial feminization. In other words, males getting faces that look more like females. So males getting narrower faces, faces that had reduced brow ridges, faces that were altogether bigger, altogether smaller. And the remarkable thing about this is the trend for males to become less male-like and more female-like. And in animals, when we see that, it's associated with a reduction in male aggressiveness. And so it seems to me far and away the most reasonable thing to assume is that just as humans are now rather low in the scale of this day-to-day reactive aggression, then the time when they trend towards a reduction in that kind of aggressiveness happened was when we see the reduction in maleness in the heads and faces.
What's fascinating about what you're saying right now is that, you do go to some length to sort of inoculate these claims from any like political connotations, but there are a lot of people who are super right wing who would look at that and be like, oh well, clearly nature is on the side of the alpha males, and our society has become more feminized and womanized. And is that a concern you ever had when you were writing this book? And does that at all, I don't want to say impact your research, but is that something that's on your mind when you're discovering these things?
Well, to write about the evolution of aggression is something that is constantly nerve-wracking in the sense that we know that people will use whatever means they can to support a particular viewpoint. And aggressiveness, of course, is something that is politically and emotionally very salient. So I'm always careful about it. And my aim is, as you hinted, to try and be as objective as possible about the information and not to use it for straight political ends. You said, was I worried that people on the right wing would use the notion of a reduction in aggressiveness and a feminization of males to their advantage? I'm sure they would, but so would people on the left wing.
Right.
In my mind, it's not really suitable for the political discussion either way. You know, it doesn't particularly matter what happened 300,000 years ago. You know, what matters is what happens nowadays. But at any rate, the big point I would want to make, and I've always advocated for my co-workers and students and so on, is that we take extra care to avoid expressing the results of this sort of analysis in ways that could be misinterpreted.